A record number of overtime restarts shakes the results up for this race, and Joey Logano is now officially in the NASCAR playoffs. Let's talk about NASCAR in Nashville. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR in Music City, where we have a record 5 overtime restarts, giving Joey Logano his first win this season and his first win in quite a while, and punching his ticket into the 2024 NASCAR playoffs. We'll break all that down. We'll go through the top 10, which had some surprise names up there, and of course we'll break down that playoff grid too, and we'll break down the 5 overtime restarts, a crazy race in Nashville, and we'll talk about everything in this video. I do want to start out by saying I'm not in my typical background, my usual studio, because I actually was in attendance for today's Nashville race. I'm currently staying in Franklin, Tennessee, so certainly that was exciting. It was a great experience going to the race. You see behind me that Kyle Busch sign. Fortunately, I got 15 different signatures today. I was able to go into the garage area from team owners, from drivers alike, so certainly got Mike Helton's autograph as well, so certainly a lot of fun going in the garage. Very welcoming experience. That's, I think, the first time I've been in the garage area. You know, I've been on pit road, I've been close to it, but this is the first time I've been in the garage area at a racetrack, so certainly it was a very welcome experience, a very fun experience, even in the 90-something degree weather, so certainly it was exciting, and also have to thank everybody for stopping to, you know, have conversations and sign autographs too for the fans while they're at work. So that certainly was a great experience. But we have a race to talk about, and we have a lot to talk about. Let's kind of break this down as a story, right? I mean, let's kind of talk about the beginning of the race. You know, we have our 3 big cars of the race, you know, and then we'll get to the overtime restarts in a minute. But let's break this down, right? So every week I pick my best 3 drivers of the race, and I'm going to start out with them because I obviously have Tyler Reddick, who finished in the 3rd position. He was fast all day long, was able to come back up to finish 3rd. We'll talk about that. So Tyler Reddick gets a solid 3rd place finish. Denny Hamlin finishing 12th, and then Christopher Bell, who was probably the fastest, or was definitely the fastest car of the race, swept the stages, one stage 1, one stage 2, and was really fast throughout the entire race. All the Toyotas were fast. Was definitely the fastest car of the race. Unfortunately, gets caught up in an incident. So we have the entire race, right? And then we have the rain delay about right before the halfway point, and then, you know, the track's starting to change a little bit. But Christopher Bell was the class of the field. We had guys like Denny Hamlin lead at the green flag for a little bit, trying to catch Christopher Bell. We had guys like Tyler Reddick, who was really fun to watch because it looked like he was getting faster as the sun set a little bit. You know, the grandstand covering up some shade on the front straightaway, he was getting a little bit quicker as well. So trying to watch them, see if they could catch Christopher Bell. And then we have a late race caution, or about 76 laps to go, so not too late, and that's when things really shook up because we had strategy come into play. This could put guys like Ross Chastain, Bubba Wallace back up front, Kyle Busch up front, and that put Christopher Bell in a bad spot, and unfortunately he gets taken out in an accident with 76 laps to go. So the dominant car of the race does not even finish the race. An absolutely disastrous 34th place finish for Christopher Bell. Very disappointing there. The good thing for Christopher Bell, like he said in his post-race interviews, he did have speed. You hear that a lot out of Christopher Bell when things are going bad, right? You know, when he was on a bad streak for about a month, you know, he was positive the whole time. Just said, we have speed. We just, you know, got to get back up to getting those results, which they weren't getting at that time. Certainly didn't get the results today, but, you know, no doubt in my mind Christopher Bell will come back from this strong in the coming weeks, but certainly a disappointing finish. Then you had Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick. Those guys were really fast, and it was a fun race. We had a lot of stuff going on. We had Denny Hamlin trying to catch Ross Chastain for, I want to say it was 30, 40 laps. It was a great battle. You had Kyle Busch in 3rd trying to hold off Kyle Larson, who was in the 4th position, and then coming to the white flag, Austin Cindric gets turned with 2 laps to go on the back straightaway, throwing a caution, which leads us to our first overtime attempt, and things really just went crazy from there. We had an overtime attempt. Kyle Larson unfortunately gets up into Ross Chastain, causing a wreck there. We then go to another overtime attempt, and we did this 5 times. We had 5 late race restarts at the end of this race, certainly shaking up the results. And a lot of these drivers like Denny Hamlin, like Kyle Larson, were actually short on fuel, so it completely took them out, and it put Joey Logano up front, and also Kyle Busch involved in a wreck as well. in one of those late race restarts here. So really a bad day for Kyle Larson too, right? I mean, Kyle Larson ultimately doesn't get the result that he wanted, right? I mean, he got some stage points, but didn't get the result that he wanted. But he also caused a few trouble, right? I mean, he wrecked Ross Chastain. You know, I think there's nobody really else to blame on that. It's hard racing. It obviously wasn't intentional, I don't think, from looking at it, but it was hard racing. And then, of course, you know, runs out of fuel on one of the restarts, you know, gets caught up in a wreck with Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch needs a good day. He gets caught up in an accident. Sort of Kyle Larson's fault there. You know, Kyle Larson's been causing some accidents the last few weeks involving other drivers while he continues to go. A little bit frustrating there for fans and other drivers alike. I'm not going to put the blame all on Larson. I know he's just racing. He's trying to get the results, but certainly just hasn't been looking great for Kyle Larson as far as the, you know, getting involved in accidents over the last few weeks. So certainly, you know, you guys can take a look at that and judge that for yourself. But certainly Kyle Larson, not the best showing tonight in my opinion, just watching him on the racetrack. We know he's a really good race car driver, right? And we know he didn't do it intentionally, but at the end, you know, he still caused the wreck, you know, regardless if he did it intentionally or not. So I just wanted to bring that up as well. But in the end, on the final restart, Joey Logano was able to hold off Tyler Reddick. You can take a look at it here, the 5th overtime restart, a record 5th overtime restart, I may add. And Tyler Reddick, unfortunately, just couldn't quite get by Joey Logano in just 2 laps on the fresh 4 tires. So one of those 3 fastest cars I mentioned earlier on did not get the victory tonight, which is certainly unfortunate for those Toyotas. It was a Ford. Joey Logano, who was running outside the top 15 the entire race, sometimes, or I believe outside the top 20 for a majority of the night, comes away with the win and punches his ticket into NASCAR's playoffs. So certainly an exciting finish. You know, we can talk about the finish and how exciting it was, because it was certainly exciting, a lot to talk about, but I do have a little bit of a bone to pick, right? It wasn't my favorite race having all the overtime restarts, because for one, you have to wait to get the last 2 laps in, right? I mean, there's a lot of caution laps. You're sitting around waiting in the grandstands. I think the fans were having a great time during it, but I know it gets a little frustrating watching on TV, at least for me. I think we had a similar situation in 2023 at Circuit of the Americas, where Tyler Reddick got the win, where we kept, you know, going to overtime restarts, getting very frustrating. And I feel like it doesn't always quite reward the driver that should have won the race, right? I mean, all the fastest cars were taken out. And I think, in my opinion, the best way to fix this is to implement a 1 overtime rule. You get 1 overtime attempt. After that, that's it. I think, in my opinion, that's the easiest to understand. And that's the least chaotic way, right? When you go to Daytona 500, you know, the big stage at Daytona, or the other plate races like Talladega, we have a lot of overtime finishes sometimes. That would limit that down to just 1 overtime attempt. So it certainly would be frustrating, right? I mean, when a race ends with 2 laps to go, you throw the caution and the race ends, is always unfortunate, but I would rather have that than what we had tonight, which sort of just jumbles up the results and stuff. Just not my cup of tea. I've heard a few other opinions where they really enjoyed it, so you know, certainly that's your opinion. I think I've heard a majority of fans didn't quite enjoy this. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the results of this race, right? Joey Logano punching his ticket to the playoffs. He's had a rough season, no doubt. Sort of steals a win a little bit. I don't want to call it a complete fluke win, because this is Joey Logano, right? 2-time champion, but sort of sneaks up there with the overtimes. Everybody else running out of fuel, everybody else getting involved in wrecks, gets up there, wins his first race since Atlanta in 2023, at the beginning of 2023, I may add. I think it was like the 4th or 5th race of that season, so certainly getting back to victory lane for him is a big deal. They have struggled on 1.5 miles all year. I was concerned about him going into this weekend, because we have so many 1.5 miles or intermediate style racetracks before we got to the postseason. Well, now no longer concerned, right? He's in the playoffs, and maybe he can certainly step up moving forward. Zane Smith, huge deal for Zane Smith, going into today and leaving today. Actually, he is 34th in points, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is the lowest driver in points out of all the full-time drivers that have raced every single race. So a 2nd place finish tonight for Zane Smith is absolutely huge. I know he wanted to get the win. I liked his post-race interview. He wanted to go up there and get the win, right? You know, Joey Logano could have run out of fuel. He stretched fuel. Zane Smith could have been the winner of this race, which is very exciting. Certainly crazy to think about Zane Smith being in the playoffs, but he was able to take that 71 Chevrolet and put it in the 2nd position. What a drive by Zane Smith, really. That was very incredible what he was able to do. Capitalize on the crazy overtime restarts and get that 2nd place finish is certainly exciting. Talk about an underdog story. Didn't quite get the win, but certainly somebody you don't expect to be in the top 10, top 20, this season for sure. Getting a second place finish is great for that 71 team, and maybe give them a little shot of momentum to get some more speed moving forward as well. Tyler Reddick, talked a little bit about him earlier on, was sort of that third fastest car all day long. Was on the fresher tires. I believe if we had 2 more laps in this race, which we definitely didn't need any more laps, but certainly if it was a little bit of a longer run, if it wasn't an overtime restart, I think Tyler Reddick in that situation would have been able to get the win. He was just flying through the field on the fresh tires. Ryan Preece, a solid run for him as well, sort of had a rough season all year long. Did not really run in the top 10 a majority of the day, but was able to salvage a top 5 finish. Chris Buescher, another solid day for him, getting the 5th position. He needed those points going into today because of the playoff situation, especially after Joey Logano gets that win. And once again, we'll take a look at that in a little bit. Ryan Blaney, a solid 6th place finish for him, was able to come back, right? That was one of the drivers that had to pit for fuel in the later stages of the race, but was able to come back with all the chaos. Bubba Wallace, what a turn of events that was for him throughout the overtime restarts, right? I believe he went down pit road for fuel at one point, went all the way to the back, was able to get all the way back up and finish in the 7th position. So another good points day for another driver, Bubba Wallace, certainly exciting for him. And then of course you have Kyle Larson finishing in the 8th position. Solid run for him. I mentioned how this was not his best performance, was still able to come across the line in the 8th position. So a top 10 for Kyle Larson. Daniel Hemrick, another one of those guys that's, I believe, outside the top 30 in points, getting a solid run for the 31 Chevrolet. Nice 9th place finish for Daniel Hemrick. I want to say that's his first top 10 this season. And then Noah Gragson as well, back in the top 10. Certainly exciting to see that as well. That rounds out your top 10. So let's bring up the playoff grid. 19 of the 26 races complete. 7 races to go to the NASCAR playoffs is set. And once again, we have our 4-way tie for most wins this season with 3 wins apiece. Joey Logano is added to this list, jumps up to 9th on the playoff grid. Well, let's focus on these guys in green, right? So we have once again, we have our 11 winners in 19 different races. So certainly, a little bit more winners than we've had last season. 5 spots remaining, 7 races to go. I don't think we'll get to 16 winners. I said going into this year we'd get 12 different winners. I'm going to stick with that. I think we can get through with just one more winner with the speed I've seen out of certain drivers this season, so certainly that's still possible, but Martrex Jr. is really the only guy that I think is entirely safe in this situation, right? Because he's 143 above. The speed I've seen out of him, I expect him potentially to win more races this season. He might go out there and win the championship. I'm not concerned for Truex. Everybody behind him, Ty Gibbs, Chastain, Buescher, Bowman, I am concerned because if you get one more winner, right, today, like, a Josh Berry who's run up front in the past at certain racetracks, at shorter ovals, a Ryan Preece who's run well at certain racetracks as well, if they could go up there and get a victory, you can never count out Kyle Busch. You can never count out other drivers that could go out there and get a win. We still have Daytona to finish out the regular season that knocks 16th, which right now is Alex Bowman, below the cut line, right? So it's really a battle to be 15th, I think. That's how every team needs to be viewing this. That's in green right now, right? I mean, Truex is safe. You can almost put him in gold. But Ty Gibbs, once again, a little bit higher, but that's just one race, right? One wreck, and Ty Gibbs could be on that hot line in the 15th or 16th place on that playoff grid with the different winners, right? With Suarez winning, with Cindric winning, they're below 16th in regular season points. But with those wins, that puts them up, and that moves the cut line up as well. So certainly we'll have to continue to watch that. Bubba Wallace, 51 points out. You're just hoping you can gain some more points. I mean, a solid finish today for Bubba Wallace, but he's starting to fall out, starting to run out of races. And then once again, you can always get that surprise winner at a track like Daytona or strategic range shortened race, or just guys with speed, right? It can happen. There's more parity now than there has been in previous years. So certainly just far away from 15th or 14th if you're Bubba Wallace. Same thing with Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch. If you're Chase Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Josh Berry, anybody below them, I think you just need to look at it as a must-win. Sure, you can point your way in. There's definitely situations where you could point your way in. Mathematically, you can make the playoffs off of points, but just with so many variables, there could be another winner. I think that they need to be aiming, and especially with Kyle Busch and Berry and below, over 100 points out with only 7 races, I think the best case scenario is to focus on wins. Try to go out there and get the win. Don't worry about points at this point. We'll see what they do. I think that's what those drivers and teams will do moving forward. And it's been a really disastrous year for Kyle Busch. I mean, I can't even tell you how rough it's been on him the last few weeks. Has had top 10 speed at multiple racetracks, get caught up in a wreck, had one of his worst races ever last week, and then today is running in the 4th position, reports engine trouble for a little bit, and then reports and then gets caught up in an accident, and then gets caught up in another accident on two of the overtime restarts. So certainly just really frustrating season for him, and it continued today. So certainly we'll have to continue to watch that moving forward. But that's it. That's really all there is to talk about following this race from Nashville, or at least I tried to get into all of it. It was exciting. It was a great experience being at the racetrack. I really enjoyed it. And of course, next week, Chicago Street Course, one of NASCAR's big events right now. It was great last year with SVG winning. He's going to try to go back-to-back next week. So certainly tune into that. Tune into Dirty Air following the Chicago race. Hopefully I have the video up a little bit sooner next week following the event. And of course, like and subscribe if you like the video. And then of course, share the video if you do. I really do appreciate it. And of course, about Kyle Busch walking out and doing some, I don't know if what kind of hand motion that was. If that might have been a bow or something else on the front straightaway. Let's get rowdy.